how do organizations think about that, particularly from an integration perspective? And the reason we asked that was, you brought it up, and we see a lot from our customers too. There's many more tools, automation tools, infrastructure tools, or existing tool sets that that organizations have, and they go and invest in. And then the question is, how do you bring all these tools together, or how do you make sure they're well integrated?
Yep.
And again, we found this kind of interesting insight, which is this kind of dichotomy again, right? 97% of the organizations, of these senior level decision makers who responded, said that making that integration process is extremely important, right? So streamlining integrations is key, right? So that's really important for automation. But then what we learned also was that when it comes to that integration challenge today, custom coding still rules, right? Writing custom scripts still rules. In fact, I think the data here shows that 3/4 of enterprises still custom code at least a quarter of their integrations. So I thought that was just kind of interesting again, right?
Yep.
Streamlining and making integrations is top of mind, it's important, but the reality or the truth of the situation is that a manual custom approach is still very much, the status quo. So
Yeah.
thoughts, Matt, on this and what you're seeing in the market?
Yeah. So I think this isn't totally surprising to me. I mean, you have to think about it again, as you pointed out at the top. We're talking to organizations that are really large, 1,000+ employees in the global. So you have to assume that A, they've been around for a while, B, their own technology landscape, their stacks and stuff like that may actually be, well, actually, I was going to say they may be kind of diverse, but actually, I want to correct myself and say, my guess is that there's so much custom coding here is an artifact of a time when you think about it, a lot of IT solutions were fairly monolithic. And if you were getting new tools, you were getting them from the IBM or HP or whoever was providing your stuff. And the idea of if you had to integrate anything at all, it was something that fell outside of this monolith, and custom coding was required because now I need special ways to integrate things. Now we've gotten to the point where, and this is even this whole conversation is about hybrid cloud. It's a given that people, first of all, are using different technologies. They could be using not just a private cloud run on with whatever technology they're using for that, VMware, whatever. And then on top of it all, they're using more than one public cloud. So there's already a diversity in the technical landscape of the clouds themselves. But there's also, as we get just, infrastructure as code or Kubernetes, everything that's happened has actually, as you also mentioned, proliferated the number of tools. So part of this, like I said, the amount that there's still a quarter of the integrations are custom coded is this legacy artifact of that was your only choice. It was kind of a default originally. Now we're getting to the point where you don't have a monolithic stack anymore. You are automatically going to have a disparate set of tools. And what this indicates to me is that a lot of organizations haven't, especially if we see like more than half are doing almost half of their integrations in a custom coding way, means companies haven't made this operational leap to actually seeking out the tools or seeking out ways to streamline integrations, which everyone agrees is totally critical. And yet somehow they're stumbling and they haven't been able to transform their own approach to integration because it's still stamped by a kind of old way of doing things, which is we got a custom code because what else are we going to do? There's nothing out there that can help us. So part of it too is a market education that in fact, there are tools out there that can help you integrate in a faster, more streamlined way. And it's, so again, it comes, again, a lot of these things, it's in this case, it's education more than behavior. Just companies need to learn, especially this 57% needs to become more aware that there's a better way.
There's a better way. No, Matt, I think that's a great segue. Like, you mentioned kind of these new tools and technologies, right? You mentioned, infrastructure as code, you mentioned Kubernetes, you mentioned kind of like the deconstruction of the monoliths. And, to that point about this kind of education of kind of an older way of doing it, but maybe there's a newer way. We want to poke on that a little bit. And just really, understand, right? What are those challenges with custom code today, right? What are enterprises saying as the difficult parts? And I think what we learned from this survey is we asked, what are those problems? And it really boiled down to a couple things, right? Like with custom coding, right? These IT decision makers say that their teams, right, just requires a high degree of
Yeah.
domain knowledge and subject matter expertise. And I think that sounds very prescient given like all these new technologies, Kubernetes, infrastructure as code, even legacy kind of tools and technologies they need to use. So that definitely I think aligns with kind of what you're seeing. The need for 61% said, custom code requires a high degree of scripting or coding expertise and it's time consuming. And then I thought this was really interesting, Matt. Maybe you have a view on this, but 47% said that custom integrations become unmanageable
Oh yeah.
as I introduce more tools in my enterprise. So I think maybe to your point, right, as these clouds expand from private to public, and on top of those CSP environments, you're actually using more tools and technologies.
Yeah.
All of that just multiplies the amount of custom integrations, and it feels like, at least from the respondents, that will become an unmanageable task. So,
Yeah.
maybe there is a better way out there, or these are actually
No,
very serious challenges.
I'm positive there's a better way. I mean, I think we don't need to kind of trot out all the problems with custom coding. I think it was like, I think if we said, if we asked anyone in IT operations, if you could do integrations without having to custom code anything, would you prefer that, or would you like to continue custom coding?
Yeah.
No one's going to say, we're going to stick with custom coding. Nothing's broken there. As you're showing here, the pain is very, very real.
Yeah.
And it's a pain on, even if you didn't have this proliferation of tools, or if it was just at a smaller scale, it's still painful. I need more people. I need people with specific expertise. It's costly then in terms of time and the people I have to bring in, and just what it's going to cost if I have to pay people to code. But then beyond that, as you said, it's not only does custom coding create a technical debt that you constantly have to maintain, and that's going to bring with it ongoing security and governance issues, because you have to keep everything updated. Now you're just proliferating risk with every generation of custom code. And you can't think, well, the tool sets are out there. No innovations are going to come down the pike that I'm going to want to take advantage of. It's just not true. There are new tools and new possibilities every single day. And so what's interesting, I think there are companies that, it's not like companies don't recognize this. And there's a financial services company called Blend that they were having this problem. So they work with they offer software management, investment management tools and things like that for financial institutions. Again, sprawling, huge institutions, a lot of legacy, hardware from acquisitions and growth and all this other stuff. It's total mess. What they were finding is, even to service their clients, they ended up having to have dedicated engineering resources for each client, which means they just couldn't actually actively scale. And plus, as you're pointing out here, there was more and more pressure on the individual engineers to have to solve all these problems over and over again at each client. So they were able to put in, I mean, this is just one example, but they basically created a service so that they could tap into APIs quickly. You didn't have to, they automated this process so that engineers could actually handle multiple clients. They could do it without having to have special expertise, because it's actually built into their service tool. And what they found, and this is a way to think about this, it's always going to be easier to handle the integrations just through configuration of a control panel, rather than having to go into the code and do custom coding all the time. And again, and they found, why did Blend have to produce this? It's because it was not just a pain for them, because how they constantly had to update their own resources or expand just to support their clients. But it also ended up being poor client delivery, because things take so long, and you just can't get the support and the quality of experience and performance that you're looking for without a low code configurable approach to things. If you're still relying on custom coding, there's really no future in that, unless it's a future of pain. It's going to be a future of pain.
Yeah. No, that's okay. So actually, that's a really interesting use case. So I took a few notes here, and I'll read up on this after. You just talk about this kind of blend, just to summarize it. And I understand that, this kind of challenge with custom code, but they took this, it sounds like blend. Their engineers are building a custom code. And what they kind of did later was build more of a, almost you say kind of like a services model where those
Yeah.
integrations or custom code became actual services that could be used by engineers. So that was kind of
Yeah.
the new way of thinking, kind of a services based approach.
Exactly, because
That's
again, it allows your engineers to do more quickly with,
Mhm.
and that just benefits everyone.
Got it. No, super helpful. Thank you, Matt.